morning everyone, and thanks very much for coming along. Paula and I are extremely privileged to be able to share our experience of sailing a Seawind 1000 around Australia. Why did I do it? Well, I had a boat that I believe that was capable of the journey. I had the knowledge and the experience. Now, I took delivery of my Seawind 1000 Amazing Grace in Sydney in the year 2006, and I sailed it up to the Whitsunday Passage and then back to Sydney and back to Melbourne. And I had 28 people stay with me over that 4 months, and only had one night by myself, and I had a lot of people that were interested in sailing with me again. Now, Paula and I lost our spouses to cancer some four and a half years ago, and we knew each other and we knew the families, and Martin was a shore engineer at Stratford in Victoria, and I was at Tarragona as a shore engineer, so I knew Martin since 1981. But after Martin died, Paula took her Pacific 27 out by herself around Raymond Island. So I thought, well, you know, he's a pretty experienced sailor, and she'd been sailing for a long time in mirrors and trailer sailors. But Paula was one person in particular that really made this journey possible too. And we actually we got married in July of last year after our return.
It's a good test.
Yeah, a good test it was. The journey is it's quite a big continent. It's actually, I did 10,000 nautical miles around the mainland and about 1,800 around Tasmania. And if you take the shortest path, it's 7,000 nautical miles around the mainland. The boat is very well equipped to undertake such a journey. The navigation instruments are all in front of you. You can see them on the boat next door. The chart plotter is an 8-inch, which gives us plenty of room. And I think this photo was taken before Paula got on board, because you can see a bit of the untidy mess. The saloon table seats a lot of people around it. Also has our charts on the table, and you can see through the windows, and if it's inclement weather, you've got excellent visibility. And one thing we really appreciated was being able to stick our head around the corner and look ahead when we're coming down along the Western Australian coast and the southern Victorian and South Australian coast, dodging lobster pots and the buoys on the lobster pots. It also was a floating office, and this is one of the members of the crew, John Clayton. He's done 3 trips with me now. He's a consulting structural engineer, and he's actually doing some work and sending it back to the office via the computer, so they don't know he's out on the ocean, working out on the ocean. One special occasion I used the boat, I auctioned a dinner, or they auctioned a dinner for a boy that had been through cancer and Make-A-Wish, and these people paid $1,100 per day on the Gippsland Lakes. And I had a friend, Bob Yates, who was a bit of a cook, and he produced this magnificent menu and salmon trout from Tasmania. And this was on the Gippsland Lakes. It was a beautiful morning, but we went up Duck Arm, and as the wind came in at 35 knots, we then went back to Painesville with still the glasses standing on the table. My bike has been invaluable. It carried a gas bottle on the back here, and my $24 fishing line there that I bought, and a pack, and that was taken in Mackay. The tender wretch, I thought it was appropriate to name the tender wretch after, when you look at the word or listen to the words of Amazing Grace. The circumnavigation commenced in January 2007 when I left in late January to Tasmania. We're going out the Port Phillip Heads here, and these are the markers for all the shipping to come into the channel or through the Rip. Went straight across Bass Strait to Curry in King Island, and then continued on through through Hell's Gate and on into Strahan. We spent a couple of nights in Strahan, and we then were fortunate to fly over the Gordon River and see the spectacular scenery of that southwest Tasmania. We then travelled on to Port Davey and entered Port Davey in this remote wilderness, and when you're in a huge area like this in southwest Tasmania and you're only a couple of boats there, you just know how remote and magnificent it is. And well, this is Davey River Gorge, where they used to float the Huon pine down the river. We then, after leaving Port Davey, we then sailed as far south as 43 degrees, 39 minutes south, past Matsyka Island, and then up into the Doncaster Channel and up to the Wooden Boat Festival that was in full swing. At the same time, at the festival, the Dutch contingent were there with a reproduction of Duke and the boat that landed in the Gulf of Carpentaria up in the York Peninsula, Cape York Peninsula, over 400 years ago. I spent a week in Constitution Dock and it cost me $73. But if you wanted to get out, you had to get out when the weather was below 23 degrees because the drawbridge, or the lifting bridge jammed when the temperature got above 23 degrees. I had a friend, Gordon O'Brien, and Gordon flew back to Victoria, and Robin came back, his wife came back and continued up the east coast with us. Now Robin hadn't done much, hadn't done any ocean sailing, and her introduction was into the Tasman Sea. So we left Hobart into Port Arthur, and it's really eerie going into Port Arthur because you're thinking of the convicts and the environment they lived in, and it was really quite a big town. The penal settlement was only part of the whole setup there. As we left there, we went past Tasman Island, but unfortunately it was clouded in mist, and that's the closest we got to Tasman Island, or closer we see. Under Shooton Passage, and we went out into the passage and left that magnificent cruising ground of southeastern Tasmania. As we then went up the coast through Bicheno, and the weather was deteriorating, southwesterly winds 20-25 knots, and because they call them confused seas, and they were confused, we were entering St Helens, and there's a narrow little entrance here, and we were looking for a buoy, a black buoy out about here where the marked the channel, and we dropped the sails out of the life jackets on. We're about to put the storm boards in, and we're just going across, and then all of a sudden we had this large wave come behind us, lifted the stern of the boat lifted the tender, and we had about 6 inches of water, 150 millimetre in the boat, in the cockpit. Only got a little bit down in the floor, and Gordon was on the helm, and he just gave it full power and went straight in over the bar, and it stayed quite steadily, steady. Anyhow, we're in St Helens. We're in St Helens for 5 days. Well, Robin decided she'd had enough. She wanted to go home, and Gordon's brother was actually flying over to do the rest of the journey across Bass Strait. So Robin went home, and her experience of sailing in the ocean is the Tasman Sea. We left St Helens after 5 days. On the worst forecast we could actually hear, but the Coast Guard captain came down and said, look, the bar's flat, it's all flat because it's blowing from the west, just go. So within an hour we left. We then passed up on the western side of Flinders Island, and then into Killiecrankie Bay, and then up into Deal Island, and this is the passage through Deal Island where Flinders went through with his boat on his exploration of Tasmania, and he nearly lost it. The wind and the current, and he just about heeled over so much that he nearly took on a lot of water. We actually sat out a day there for the weather. One thing what I put this journey down to success is to watch the weather, and I had a friend in Tarragon who was on Helimead 1, and he said that he picks people up out in Bass Strait and they all wish they'd stay that extra day. So if you're in any element of doubt, you stay that extra day and then go. And he said that regularly happens. You don't hear about it in the news, but you hear about it from people who actually lift them out of the boats. I continued on, and we had to come into Lake's Entrance, and this is Lake's Entrance when the entrance is fairly well open. It only had been closed, but they had excavators down on the sand. That sand extended out closer to the dredge, and we got in a couple of weeks after it was open. I slipped the boat